we're super excited to bring a framework for product qualified leads to you today. We're going to be talking through just kind of our methodology that we've, like I said, collected from folks that are already doing this at some of those great PLG companies. And we're going to walk you through all of that. So Alexa, if you go to the next slide, just a quick rundown of our agenda today. We're going to talk about what product qualified leads are. Actually, recently we've heard a couple of different definitions. So it will be interesting to see whether we're all aligned on this definition of product qualified leads, or if there's any other definitions that you're using within your companies or that you're thinking about. We're going to talk about why it's important to think about product qualified leads, especially if you are doing PLG and thinking about adding sales. We're going to go through the POCUS product qualified lead framework, and then we're actually going to put that into practice, and we're going to do a live workshop. Mel and Karishma have raised their hands to be our guinea pigs for this workshop today, so I'm super excited to go through their examples. And if we have time, we'll try and take some more folks through that same workshop. And then, if we don't get you, if you really want to do it and we don't get to you, we can always schedule some more time to do this. So back over to you, Alexa, and you can jump through what are product qualified leads.
Cool. All right, so I'm assuming this term PQL isn't new to anyone here, but as Sandeep mentioned, there's a lot of definitions for this that we're realizing it's becoming more and more complex. So we want to level set, think through what this is. Maybe you debate us and tell us this is wrong before we actually dive into the workshop. So how we define PQLs is that they're users on your product who have experienced your product's core value. So the way that you define and set up PQLs within your organization, though, we see depends on two different things. First, it can be based on specific goals in your organization. So you might have a PQL for free trial upgrades, or you might have a PQL for expansion opportunities. You might have a PQL for self-serve users that are showing high potential, or mapping PQLs to customer segments. So you might have a PQL for SMBs that are different than mid-market, that are different than enterprise. So we're not saying that end of session, you're gonna have one PQL that you're leaving with. You'll have a starting point to start thinking through, okay, which of these actual users of our product have great potential to get more value out of our product and spend more with our company based on where they are as a customer segment. So things like SMB, mid-market, enterprise, or their specific goal. So PQL for expansion versus free trial upgrades. Anyone else have a different definition of what a PQL is, or something else that they thought of before coming into this discussion?
So something that I was curious about, and I think this is actually just additive, but I think the idea that someone could have not yet experienced the product's core value, but if you can get in front of the right person or to the right team or frame it in the right way, that they actually would really be a great fit for the product and get a lot of value. And so I'm curious how you think about, I know there's like moments of wow, or like moments of where someone really hits your like exact moment where they're going to do well from there, but someone who hasn't yet, but you'd like to get them there.
It's a great question. So how we phrase that is maybe they have really high customer fit, but not so much product engagement. And that's where in our mind, the sales assist team can come in saying, okay, we think that maybe you should be a really good user. Why aren't you on the product? Is there something that you're running into a blocker? Is there added friction? What's going on here? We should explore. So we can still call that a PQL, and we'll walk you through how we think about the different subsegments of PQLs being customer fit, product engagement, and buying intent, but it's an excellent point, Mel. Any other points? I know, Andreas, you unmuted.
Yeah, actually, that was a great question, and I also love the answer. And one thing I have, what in your, from your experience, are iteration time frame. So when because the reality is at one point you just have to run with the starting definition of stuff, right? And well, in our case, it's maybe the number of presentations created or the number of users invited or whatever. But what would you say is a time where you say, okay, so now we're going to change those parameters, because this is probably something where solution can help a little bit, but mostly you have to make a decision. Let's change it up. What is a good iteration time for these parameters?
It's an excellent question, and you nailed a point on, PQLs aren't set it and forget it. You're going to continuously have to experiment. I remember a statistic, DigitalOcean, when they were starting, they started with 2 PQLs, and then by the end of the year, they had 40. And they were continuously expanding based on new customer segments, new goals that they had for the organization. And some of the initial PQLs, they said, this doesn't work. And so in terms of the length of where you want to experiment, you want it to be long enough where you can test some metrics to say, is this PQL good? So maybe one of your goals is you want this to increase conversion. You want to have a length long enough that you can say, all right, I want to test this PQL and see if it increases conversion over the next 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. And just, I've seen any of those 30, 60, 90. I think it depends on your organization and how much volume you have of signups to inform how much data you can get to make a good decision about whether this is a good PQL or not. But that being said, you should always be setting timeframes to run these tests, which we'll get into, so that you can iterate and experiment and improve.
Thanks for that. What you actually said is like 30, 60, 90, that, you have to also see, from my point of view, the question even starts, should it be 1 week, 2 weeks, a quarter? It may sound ridiculous that even this variability is in there, but we are starting from zero on that, and you have these kinds of questions. So for me, like the 30, 60, 90 is actually an interesting perspective on it, and we got to see. But I think a month probably is a good baseline at least. Thank you so much.
Of course, and that's what Cypress did, Sandy, right? They started with 30.
Yeah, and then like depending on, because some of their PQLs then were mapping to like more revenue focused goals, and so those revenue focused goal ones were definitely longer because they know that the sales cycle is X number of days or X number of weeks. So that I think was more in that span of like 90 days or longer.
I'll breeze through these so we can get to the fun stuff. But as everyone knows, PQLs are the secret weapon of a good PLG sales motion. Without PQLs, you're trying to figure out who should I engage? What's the best metric? And so you end up wasting time and you increase the CAC and decrease ARR. But with PQLs, you have full visibility into user behavior, when you should engage, and you're able to pick out the best opportunities easily from your self-serve pipeline. So we have 5 steps to set up your PQL definition. Your first one, this is before you get to the 40, your number 1 before you get too crazy and fancy. First, you want to understand what is a good customer, your ICP. So Mel, this is what we were talking about with customer fit. And then you want to think through, okay, how are users getting value from your product? Third, you want to identify purchase intent signals. So did they do something to indicate that they might want to buy or spend more? Then you'll want to formulate your first PQL hypothesis. And then finally, you'll want to test and iterate this hypothesis in the real world, which is that 30, 60, 90 day theory that we just mentioned. So all of this, you'll notice, does not require a data scientist. It does not require a machine learning algorithm. We recommend starting simple. Your sales teams, your customer success teams, your marketers, those are the folks that really understand this deeply because they're engaging with customers. Then once you have those initial hypotheses, you can use data to actually inform and validate and get even more complex with predictions. And then we have a bonus point where you can use tools. There are good tools to help with, such as Focus, gentle plug, to help you actually take your PQL and operationalize them. So get them to the right sales rep at the right time with the right insights. So this is the same kind of setting up PQLs framework. And so what we'll start with is these 3 different categories for defining PQLs. Like I just said, we think about customer fit, product usage, and buying intent. So for customer fit, this is how closely does this account match your ICP? So these are things like industry, geography, company size, and role. Product usage. So what at the user and account level indicates that users have been engaged in your product, or these metrics such as daily active users, the frequency in which they're using your product, the recency of when they've been on your product, the time spent on your product, free to paid conversion, number of invites sent, And then finally, the last bucket is buying intent or virality signals. So was there some sort of account velocity? Did a lot of people sign up at once? Did they end up hitting the pricing page and they visited it a lot of times, meaning that they're probably looking into the next tier or upgrade? Did they click talk to sales as CTA on your website? And so there's different questions that you can think through when trying to figure out these three categories. So first being customer fit. You can ask yourself, okay, what size company do our best fit customers work for? What is the employee count in our threshold for engaging a salesperson? I won't go through all of these right now. We can send it to you after as a framework to help you start thinking through, like giving you nudges to help through what a good customer fit is. Same with product usage. What actions does a user take if they are activated? What actions correlate with high engagement? And then finally, buying intent. So are there any in-product actions that can correlate to buying propensity or any actions on the pricing page? So one quick example we'll do is with Slack. So before we dive into yours, we're going to give you a very simplistic example of what a PQL could look like. For Slack, for customer fit, they might say, you know, I only want to look at companies that sign up for a product in the tech industry in the US, with this company size of 500 to 1,500 employees, the role being head of ops. For product usage, they might want to look at things such as, you know, 2,000 plus messages sent is their sweet spot for product usage, 100 plus channels created, maybe the VP of ops signed up and invited 35 other people, and then buying intent, reach a feature limit, visited the pricing page, hit talk to sales, etc. So I'll say this is a V1 of a Slack PQL. And then what we do is actually break this up to say, okay, what is a Slack PQL for the mid-market team versus the enterprise team? Or what is a Slack PQL for someone who's trying to increase conversion as a goal versus someone who's trying to increase ARR as a goal? And so this is kind of the step one of thinking through, let's just brain dump everything for Slack of what a good customer fit is, good product usage, and good buying. So finally, after you do the steps 1, 2, and 3 of laying out customer fit, product usage, and buying intent, you're going to want to formulate these hypotheses. So you're going to talk to the customer-facing teams and say, okay, does this make sense? Can I validate this with you? What we see often is we do this exercise with sales teams, and then they want to validate with marketing and customer success, even growth. And from there, really robust insights come out saying, well, marketing thought this and growth had this perspective. Oh, can we bring that all together and have this really robust PQL that we didn't know existed before? Then you can also validate with data. You can look at cohorts of your closed won users and say, okay, why were these good deals? What are consistencies in customer fit, product usage, and buying intent? So if you said something like, I really think that our really good customer fit is from 500 to 1,500 employees, validate that with data. Say, is that true? Do companies with that customer fit often convert at a higher rate? And then you'll want to look at common patterns, like I said, in company size, geography, business model. And we also can give you some fun Mad Lib style statements to write if you need extra help writing out your hypothesis. So some fun things that we do is actually fill in the blanks. We believe our best fit customers blank because they use the product on average blank days per week, month, or year for blank use cases. Their company profile matches blank, and they say that the product adds this type of value to their company workflow or workday. And all of this is to say, get your hypotheses on paper so you're not spinning your wheels. A lot of people will come to us and say, I'm in charge of creating PQLs, but I don't know where to start and I don't have a machine learning data scientist. That's okay. Start here before validating with other salespeople, other marketers, other customer success, and before actually validating with your data. And then finally, something we talked about before is segmenting your PQLs to then know how to prioritize. And so once you understand what a good customer fit and product usage is and how you can actually, you're going to want to know, how can I actually use this to inform, to operationalize to my business? So what we recommend is once you have a really good definition of customer fit and a really good definition of product usage, to map this on a 4x4. Take all of your leads and map this to say, okay, who has high customer fit and who has high product usage? Those are the folks that are sales ready PQLs. Those are the ones that your sales team should be running after right now. Like those are the obvious low hanging fruit wins for you. Then what if you have really good high customer fit, but low product usage? This is what Mel mentioned before. there's probably something wrong with this. If they're really a good customer fit, are they running into blockers? Are they not realizing the value? Are they running into friction? Are they stuck on something? You need to get someone in there, not to try to upgrade them to the next tier, but to say, hey, what's going on and how can I help? Down here, you might have someone who has really high product usage, but low customer fit. If you have time, I would experiment with that. You might uncover a new use case or a new persona that you didn't know before, and you might want to dive in and say, how are you using this? And then finally, low customer fit, low product usage, do not dedicate any time to those. Put them into your self-serve motion. It is not worth the time of an expensive sales rep. So lastly, on step 5 of building, testing, and iterating, what you'll want to do is now write out the plan for how you're going to test and experiment with these PQLs. So first, let's say, for example, your PQL name and definition is you want to look at a PQL for mid-market free trial conversion. And this is going to be that the company that signed up had 250 plus employees and they completed 8 out of 10 onboarding steps, sorry. And then you want to say, how will we measure the success? Okay, do we really care about ACV? Do we care about PQL to CQL, SQL conversion? Do we care about time to revenue? And then you're going to want to choose the experiment parameters. So how do you want to test this? Do you want to A/B test? Do you want to do a 50-50 split of testing this PQL versus non-PQLs? And then what's the time parameter? Is it 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? And then you want to look at the impact analysis after the test. So with this PQL, did these convert at a higher rate than the typical leads? Did these have higher ACV? Did they have a quicker time to revenue? And then here's the bonus point of operationalizing PQLs. Once you're able to identify and prioritize and surface the right PQLs to the right sales reps, you want to be thoughtful about how you assign PQLs. So you'll want to route the PQLs to the right salesperson at the right time and deliver insights and recommendations on actions for how they should take the lead. So for example, say there is a mid-market free trial conversion, you will want to route that to the mid-market AE who's responsible for free trial conversion rather than an enterprise sales rep that is focused on expansion. And this is really important because there could be, if you just have a ton of PLG leads and self-serve users signing up for your product, sometimes you might have a round robin, or sometimes you might just say, everyone, all hands on deck, just pick the leads you want, but it's not the right method. It's not going to be as efficient as getting it to the right sales rep at the right time, because you'll want to get the ones that are for sales assist to the sales assist team, the ones that are enterprise sales ready to the enterprise sales team. So you have to be very thoughtful about which lead goes to the right rep and to get it to them at the same time, at the right time with the right actions. So I want to get to the live workshop. So I'm going to skip this section because I know that took a while. That was a lot. We're happy to send the deck after, send more insights. What questions do you have for me before we dive in?
Maybe from my side, because I just have written down, I think 6 months ago, what I assume could be a PQL. And currently we have an onboarding team which focus on the, let's say, signups, the first 60 days on them. And if they don't get to that point that they are a PQL, then I don't, let's say, care anymore. If they after 6 months, they get maybe to that usage, I also don't look at them, let's say, anymore. Would you recommend that, or would you say the time frame doesn't matter? It's more like that they get usage to a certain amount or to a certain point.
So are you saying if they didn't hit this aha moment or product usage metric?
Let's say it easy. If they don't hit that aha moment in the first 60 days, I don't care about that lead anymore.
I think it depends on your model and how you're defining PQLs and how you want to route it. So there's a couple different responses I could see. If someone is really high customer fit and didn't reach the aha moment, what's going on there? Do you need a sales assist person? Or is it just, maybe they aren't a great lead at this point because it's not a high priority for them. Put them back into self-serve, and maybe 6 months later, they'll get to that point where they have high product usage, and that's when a salesperson should come in. So I think it's something that, depending on your business, there's a lot of different routes that could be taken, and you need to experiment to figure that out. So maybe you say, I'm going to put these into self-serve and then check in on them 90 days later. Or you're going to say, that requires a sales assist human because they're a great logo for us and they fit our ICP. We need to figure out what's going on here.
Just to
Great.
build on what Alexa said, I love that idea. I actually think this is like a perfect example of where you could deploy an experiment, because you could see, like, is there any lift in the speed at which users get to that aha moment if you do put a human interaction in that process? And actually, our friend Rob Falcone at Guru, I think, did something similar to this, where he started offering a white glove onboarding as an experiment as part of the onboarding process, and tried to see, one, how many people opted into that white glove experience, and then those that did, how did that impact how long it took them to onboard, because they were having a similar kind of issue where there was definitely some high customer fit users on the product, but they were taking much longer than expected to actually reach those milestones. So that would be one thing. And I guess one question I have for you is, do you know what like the natural like frequency of your product is? Like, is it a product that you would use on a weekly basis, or is it a daily or a monthly?
Good question. It depends. If you get a lot of candidates, you should be in the tool daily. If you get, let's say, on a weekly basis, one candidate, it's maybe on a weekly basis. Normal clients should be, let's say, within the tool, let's say 2-3 times a week.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. So that could also be contributing. It's just kind of like the nature of like hiring actually probably makes your onboarding and that time to aha probably fluctuate quite a bit. But I'm guessing like your best customers are the ones that are like hiring like crazy all the time.
But also for us, maybe the, let's say, bad customers are also from interest, because they have maybe a bad job ad which doesn't convert. And then we could go in there, help them, and maybe implement certain tools from us so that they are better. And with that, the usage gets bigger, and then maybe they qualify. But then we already had contact.
Interesting.
Yep.
It's definitely a tricky problem, but thank you for sharing that. Any other questions before we jump into the workshop? No? All right. I am actually going to share this link with everybody so that you can all come watch as we fig jam. So if you go into the chat, go into this link, I can see that Mel and Karishma are already in there, which is great. And we are going to start workshopping. Mel, why don't we start with you? And we're going to start with mapping out your PQLs. So the way that we run this workshop normally is, first we want to figure out what are our goals. Like Alexa said, thinking about your goals is an important step in defining your PQLs, because it may determine how you segment those PQLs and then eventually route them as well. So an expansion PQL versus a free trial to free to enterprise upgrade or free trial conversion. The resources you deploy and the way that you think about that PQL will all be different. So Mel, tell me about your goals. And if you could use the stickies over here in purple to just type out some goals. And then if they align to any of these kind of buckets we've already identified, maybe drag them over. If you don't have any that necessarily align completely, that's okay. And we'll talk through them.
The PQL that I'm most interested in from a customer success standpoint is the seat expansion. It looks like in the next early 2022, we're going to be getting a sales hire who's going to be focusing on the free pool of customers and how to pull them over into converted to paid. And something that I'm really interested in is we've been around for 4 years. We have a really nice customer base that we're very thankful folks really like working with us. And I think there's a lot of untapped potential in the accounts that we have now to expand both within the team, like there are a few seats maybe in the product team, expanding to the product org, or then even expanding across departments. So seat expansion is, I think, what I'm interested in working on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I was typing and I was like, I can't read that. I should probably zoom in. So this is great because actually the narrower we can make the focus, and if we're just going to think about expansion, then we're going to have a lot more granular discussion when it comes to the next part of this, which is moving down into the signal brainstorm. So this is the framework that Alexa just reviewed. So we're going to go through each of these and start answering some of these questions. So Mel, when you think about your best fit customers, and especially the ones that are, let's say, already starting to naturally expand, what are some of their attributes? Like, what are the employee counts that you're looking at for those expansion opportunities? Are there any particular industries or personas and any geographies that we want to specifically target for this?
So some of these things I think we're still learning and still figuring out, but for the geography piece, we did have a data scientist already run the data, and they have segmented into tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, like geographical areas. And so folks in tier 1 are much more likely to buy and have been successful. So tier 1, which has like whatever 8 countries within it, is something that we think about. Industry, we tend to sell to other software companies, but that's also, I wouldn't actually, that doesn't seem as useful as knowing whether or not someone will expand. The company size, to be honest, I don't really know. My guess would be 50 to 150. And then role, something that I have been working on is product teams who are using Whimsical. And so within there, when like a head of product or product manager joins, that is someone who I've worked with a lot, and I think, and they have been successful.
Okay.
Is this
yeah,
sort of what you're looking for? Okay.
Exactly. So tier 1, those 8 countries that you define as part of tier 1 tech.
Yep.
Specifically product teams, and that head of product or PM role is really important to you, and that 50 to 150 company size. It's perfect.
I'm curious if you also, for the expansion to other departments, are you picking up now on, okay, there's a lot of people that are on the product team, but oh, interesting, they also just invited someone from the marketing team. So there are other specific departments that when they pop up, you get excited?
Yeah, I think starting with product, it goes laterally to marketing and engineering. We're seeing too, which is really nice. And so either of those departments, I think, are great wins. And I feel very confident that I can help them get value when they're using Whimsical.
Awesome. So it sounds like if someone starts product and then they secondary department being marketing or engineering, that's a good trigger for you.
Yep.
Cool.
Awesome. Any other thoughts on customer fit, or should we move on to product usage?
Let's do product usage.
Awesome. So again, the questions here are, let's think about, like you just said, someone invites a user from a different department. That sounds like it's an obvious product usage trigger for you for expansion. Are there any others, like any other features within the product that tell you this account is ready to expand? And are there any other features that are like lagging indicators of that kind of expansion and stickiness?
So something that we're doing right now, and I'm wondering if we could find a way to get like one step further upstream, is that we're monitoring seat count change, both increase and decrease. And so if someone increases their seat count by over 20%, this is pretty manual right now, but we're sending an email their way and saying, we noticed that you added some seats. We're so excited to see that. We'd like to offer, if anyone would like some training as they're getting onboarded, we're here to help. Is anything else on your mind? And so we're sort of building on momentum that we're already seeing. So like, it's a little, I wish we could get some piece of information that was right before they added the seats, maybe.
Do you have a concept of like an admin in your product, and like, or someone who manages billing? And when does that happen?
Like, when does someone become an admin?
Yeah, is the admin usually the person who is the first, like, do they buy the first license within the company, or is this like someone who comes in once they reach a certain amount of seats and then it necessitates an admin?
First user is the admin, and they can promote others too.
Okay. I asked that because like, I'm curious whether, promoting more users to admin could be one of those kind of more upstream signals of this increase that you're talking about.
I like that. That makes sense to me.
And then thinking about the seats, what's your pricing model like in terms of seats?
Seats, our free plan is based on usage. So you can come in at any seat count you want, and then you have a set number of items that you can create. Once you want to get unlimited items, that is when you switch to paid. And then it's based on per seat. We have an editor role, that's our paid seat. They can do everything. We have a viewer role, which is a free role. We also have guests, which is actually an interesting product usage lever maybe to monitor.
Why do you think the guest is interesting to monitor?
I think it's someone who, so guests are free versus inviting an editor to your workspace. And so I think people are starting to use that when maybe you're on the product team and you're like, I really want to get something done with the marketing team. And so I'm going to invite them as a guest. So it's their first opportunity to dip their toes in the water. And I'd like to make sure the guests want to stick around and do more.
Interesting. Okay. So it was interesting what you mentioned about the pricing model. So the free plan has those unlimited seats, but you've restricted certain features in that plan. And then when you upgrade, you're now paying for additional seats, and you now have unlimited access to some more advanced features. What are some of those more advanced features? I'm curious. And are there any indicators is there a correlation between that seat expansion and some of those more advanced features?
So unfortunately, actually, the free plan and our first paid tier is not super feature differentiated. It's more the amount of content you're allowed to create. So if you can picture, it's a digital whiteboarding tool. So if you can picture, you're allowed to make 1,000 items in your flowchart or your mind map or your wireframe. And so you can do that in free or paid, but you can only create 1,000 items in that free plan. And so that's something that actually might change in 2022, because not having those feature differentiated at that free to pay is an interesting choice. But does that make sense so
yeah,
far?
that does. And actually that
Okay.
makes me think of you, Andreas, because of Pitch. Do you guys have a similar model where you're trying to incentivize kind of like more people using Pitch versus trying to limit that? Or is your pricing model a little different?
Well, right now, we do not incentivize it, but we are also like in the midst of discussions of revising how we wanna do that in 2022. So what I'm hearing here resonates really with the discussions going on in our company.
Cool. All right. I feel like we have enough here for product usage. Let's go to the last brainstorm, and that's on buying intent. So I think this one's pretty self-explanatory. Actions that correlate to buying propensity. Are there, like we just discussed, it sounds like there aren't a ton of those feature-based paywalls at the moment because there isn't that differentiation, but there sounds like there are paywalls in terms of amount of content. I'm curious, like, how much hand raising do you get about upgrades or about seat expansion? Like, do people reach out to ask questions about, can I add more users? I would like to learn more about your more advanced plan.
It's really low, to the point of, I think that one of the things that a value prop we bring for Whimsical is it's incredibly easy to use. And a part of that means that there's lower like support interaction, but I also think there's something where we don't quite have enough, if not moments of friction, moments of positive like engagement, or like a roadblock just to like make a point of contact with, yes, allowing someone to raise their hand or tell them they should. And so I'd say it's pretty low at the moment. And we've had a very product-focused, product-led growth strategy up till now, but I really think we could like pour gasoline on it if we found those correct moments to add in either the right tech touch or a human.
Andreas, do you have a question?
I 100% second what Mel is just saying. I'm sometimes even surprised when I reach out to people like with something pretty generic. So, hey, if there's ever anything we can do, talk to me. And then they're like super happy that we reached out, and I'm very thankful for that. But it's like, how did it even happen that they didn't actively reach out before and ask a support question or interacted with a bot on the website? So completely seconded what Mel is saying there, which is a nice low-hanging fruit. So for the record, I'm not complaining. I'm just saying this is like what, yeah.
Well, I can say, Andreas, and pitch, what got me was when I wanted to download a pitch, I wanted to get rid of the pitch logo. And so then I had to upgrade, and then I wanted to talk to sales. So maybe for your case, it could be every time someone downloads a report, could probably be a positive indicator.
Oh yeah, you mean when you export the PDF, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This is like one of the touch points that we have, and this is what I say was such a basic thing. Hey, I seen your workspace has exported a couple of PDFs. Look at our pro plan. I'm very happy to take you through that. And it's like, how well you did then, but so many people don't, and they are kind of just waiting for somebody to reach out to them, which is nice, I guess. So completely seconded what Mel said. And I love that the journey was like that for you. That's a nice little thing with the pitch logo.
Mel, I have another question for you. So are there any like points of friction when it comes to adding new users? So if I wanted to invite like my whole team at POCUS, do you know of any friction points that exist in that process?
I'm sure there are some, and I am not totally sure what they would be. There might, would it be helpful if I walked through an example of one I know we solved already, or not
Sure.
quite?
Yeah,
Okay.
I ask because sometimes it's helpful to also think of like the negative signals for each of these. And so I'm curious, like if there are any negative signals on expansion.
All right, I'm going to give you two examples. First one that we solved, second one that I think might be something. The one that we solved was we used to have a concept of personal workspaces in Whimsical where only you worked by yourself. And then if you wanted to collaborate with other people, you'd have to create a shared workspace. And that was the place that allowed you to work with your teammates. But as we were looking at things, as I was answering support questions, Whimsical is a very social app, actually. And so, or social in the capacity that you want to share content. And sorry, one moment, my cat is visiting. Hey, Bibo, you got to go.
Thank God I'm not the only one who's this happening to.
Yeah, she's actually an awesome cat, but she probably shouldn't be on this call. We realized that what we really wanted and people who were most successful were inviting their teammates. So we actually removed the friction of personal workspaces, because you can actually use a shared workspace by yourself if you want. And so now we're no longer getting calls or like emails from people that say, hey, I'm in this workspace, but I can't invite anyone. And then we don't have to say like, oh, switch to a team workspace and do all of that. So we fixed that one. That's not a problem. A current signal that we're seeing is sometimes people invite guests instead of inviting an editor, even on the free plan. And I think they're just confused in the UX. And we are doing some improvements there. But is that helpful for thinking about the buying intent? Okay.
Yeah, like that seems like a perfect example of like, you know, obviously you want to fix that in a more self-serve way, but in the interim, like, could this be where this could be an entry point for you to have that kind of like expansion conversation with a human touch point potentially, or just like even more of a low touch approach of sending an email and being able to like proactively reach out with the solve and maybe even proactively saying, hey, we're fixing this, could be an interesting something to trial. I know we're running out of time, so I want to now move on to kind of the last step. And we won't actually go through and let's like write down all of these definitions together, but I wanted to walk through how we think about this. So once you go through that PQL brainstorm and Luckily for us, we focused on that very narrow use case of seat expansion. We want to then start like naming and defining different PQLs to test. And so I would say we want to take some of those signals that we defined as customer fit, product usage, and buying intent, and then map them to maybe, let's say, 2 or 3 PQLs that we want to test. And then the next step is like to figure out, does this data exist? Where does that data live? So that you could start to like maybe analyze this information and see just manually, like, okay, if I say that these 3 things are true from customer fit, product usage, and buying intent, what users currently fall into that cohort of PQL? And what can I learn about that? Like what patterns exist there? What have we done to positively impact their experience? What have we done maybe wrong? Like what are some missteps that we took with those particular users? And maybe even then apply this to like historical information. So take this PQL and apply it to opportunities that have already expanded, have shown like, you know, the positive outcome of seat expansion within an organization. Do those map well? Like, is the conversion really high there? And then maybe that's when you start to think about, okay, how am I going to operationalize this as part of, you know, my customer success team, sales team, whatever team is going to be working on this. Thank you so much, Mel, for running through this example.
Amazing. And I just want to leave with like tangible notes. If we can go back up to the screen around next steps, Sandy, just so we know what would happen from here. So Mel, that you're not leaving being like, okay, now what do I do? What we recommend is you map out some of these PQLs. You say, okay, seat expansion. Let's put a hypothesis down. I think for seat expansion within the same department, I want to look at when the VP of product is on the product, is engaged, and they're on the tech industry, and they have over 500 employees in their company, and seat expansion has increased by 20%. And then you're going to map another PQL for your other goal of saying, I want to know when they expand to other industries or other departments, sorry. So maybe that PQL, you're going to define it as VP of products engaged, invited 10 people in marketing, and invited 5 people in engineering, or whatever those metrics are. And what you'll do is you'll take this data and you'll validate it. You'll pull out your data around usage and customer fit, even if it's manual, like even if you're just like using Excel, asking someone to just gut check, and you're going to say, okay, is this real? Is this what's happening? And you'll want to continue experimenting with these PQLs. And once you get it to a point where you're confident, like this could be good enough, then is where you operationalize it. So then you want to plug it into a system to say, how can I now have a Slack alert every single time someone signs up when they're a VP of product in the tech industry and seat expansion is greater than 20%? So how can I alert sales teams so that they know when this is happening and then they can take the right action? So it's exactly what Andreas was saying. How can a sales rep know every single time someone wants to export a PDF file? Okay, because at that moment, that's likely the inflection point where sales should engage. And so you want to be very proactive to whether it's an automatic sales reach out, or if you want to start a marketing cadence to just say, every time this happens, send an email. That's when you want to start to operationalize. And so I didn't want to leave you hanging thinking like, okay, now I have this data, now what? If you want to keep chatting about it, we can like talk to you also how POCUS comes in to operationalize this and experiment. But we're also always here to answer questions. Like we love kind of getting into the weeds and the data to try to understand really everything we can about PQLs.
One thing to quickly share there, Alexa, before I hop off, is like the way we test this stuff in a minor scale at Vidyard is by just building out outreach lists based off of like the PQL criteria before we operationalize. So we have like a ton of like different CSVs literally that like our sales team is working through and like hacking through just to see what signals would actually be useful. And then when we hit like a list where we find that the success rate is fairly high, that's the point at which we know, okay, these signals are pretty useful and we should go in and operationalize and automate that. So it could be like an easy way, Mel, for you to test early and like validate what signals might be more effective in the early days.
Cool. Yeah, thank you everybody for using my stuff as an example, and these are all great ideas.
All right.
Amazing.
Thank you guys so much. This was so awesome. Thank you, Mel, for sharing your example.
Thank
Again,
you.
sorry, Karishma, we didn't get to yours, but it sounds like everyone's keen to maybe do another one of these. If you have any more questions, you're all in the community. So please Slack Alexa or I with your questions.